Hello and welcome back to ShatterCast, the podcast where we talk about all things nerdy that we love, and somehow on a weekly basis we figure out a way to tie it back to Jesus. So that's great. Today we have some fun things we're going to talk about, but before we do that, Derek, did you know that Dracula is actually in the lore of the DC universe? He's a
What?
character in the DC universe. Exactly. Unfortunately, Superman is not able to take him out. Do you know why?
I don't. Why, John?
Because he can't go anywhere near Dracula's kryptonite. That's right. Thank you for sticking around after all of my terrible puns. Today we are going to be talking about the Snyder Cut of Justice League. So if you haven't seen it, I'm going to say spoiler warning, but that's only because it's such a different movie than the movie that we got 4 years ago. So I'm excited to talk about it. I think I've got some good things to say, maybe a couple negatives, but for the most part, I pretty much enjoyed it. But I want to start with the rest of you guys. Derek, why don't you kick us off with some of your biggest positives after watching the Snyder Cut of Justice League?
Sure. I would say my biggest positive is it's a lot better than the actual cut. There you go. I think the major thing is they took the time to flesh out a lot of the characters and stuff. And so I think that was probably my biggest point. Cyborg has a whole storyline now. I thought that was a big benefit to him. Steppenwolf, the bad guy, we actually get some of his motivation. We don't still find out how he betrayed Darkseid in the movie. Snyder later on addressed that, saying that there's like some revolt or whatever, and Steppenwolf was on the wrong side. But anyways, at least we have this idea that Steppenwolf is doing all these things to get back in the graces of Darkseid. So I thought that was great. Yeah, we had a whole connective tissue for Cyborg. We had some new characters that were put back in that we didn't know. So I thought benefited probably those two characters the most. A few other characters that I thought helped was the Flash. We saw his storyline fleshed out a little bit as they're preparing. They're still planning from the day we're recording to release a Flash movie. I say that because it's changing all the time. I thought Aquaman got a little bit more set up for his movie that already released, but hey, better late than never.
It threw me off, honestly. I have to point out real quick that even though I know all these things, we were watching the movie and I was like so confused about how Aquaman was behaving, and I was like, oh wait, this movie's 4 years old, just not.
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing when he was like going to get the trident. I was like, wait, doesn't he already have the trident?
Like, what's going on? Like, why is he being so emo right now? Like, what happened since Aquaman? Oh, right, this was before Aquaman.
Which yes, it does put you in a different mind space.
Yeah.
So definitely. And then to a small part, I thought Superman actually benefited a little bit more. We had a few more scenes when he was brought back to life, and a few more scenes with him and Lois and stuff like that. So it made his part help a little bit. So yeah, that's my big thing. I got a few others, but what about the rest of you guys?
Black Suit
Ryan, take it
Superman.
away. What was that?
Black Suit Superman was the best.
What's your favorite part? What's the wardrobe?
Look, that's how they did it in the comics, man. Okay, when he comes back with the black suit, and it looks 10 times better, and he looks more intimidating, and I love it. It's totally not my phone wallpaper right now.
Definitely.
Interesting note. So Snyder's been giving a bunch of interviews, and from my understanding, it was still Henry Cavill in his regular red and blue suit, but they had found a way to color correct it because they didn't know if they would be able to do that or not. So I think he's still in his red and blue suit. They just found a way to color correct it, which Snyder always wanted to do. But yeah, fun fact.
Okay, well, maybe with the amazing success of the Snyder Cut, we'll just get them to create a black suit for the next one instead of having to post afterwards. It seems like, I don't know, I have a hard time feeling if that's the financially sound way to go about it to just like, well, we'll just color correct it instead of making a new suit. But
from my understanding, we'll talk about this later too. I think
Yeah.
he was getting some resistance from the studio to doing that originally, so they kind of pre-tested it to make sure they pre-tested to make sure they were able to do that, and then when he went back and actually did the Snyder cut, he actually was able to do it.
So it was more it was the only way to do it. That makes sense. Okay. Anything else, Brian, that you really liked? I mean, you're a resident DC expert, so feel free to talk your ears off.
So yeah, I also agree with Derek said. The character development was a lot better for this one. You know, all the deep story with Cyborg and his background with his dad. You know, having his dad, major spoiler, sacrifice himself at the end.
Yeah,
that was pretty intense. I loved Steppenwolf's new his new, not really uniform, but
CGI armor.
CGI-ness. Yep. The scale effect was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you could see all the little scales move. And then like when he was talking to Darkseid, it like showed his skin. Thought that made him more intimidating and actually a villain. I liked that. Like Derek said, Steppenwolf actually had a little bit more of a backstory. You know, he's like repaying his debts to Darkseid, which I thought they mentioned that he was betrayed. Like it was because of revolt before, but maybe not. I don't remember.
They mentioned that he had done something against Darkseid. They didn't go into depth of what it was.
Yeah, they mentioned your betrayal, but I don't think they actually said what the betrayal was. And to the point about the armor, it constantly was reminding me of what I would imagine a creepy villain wearing Iron Man's bleeding edge armor. Right, like so Iron Man's bleeding edge is the nanite armor that he has in Infinity War Endgame, which was super cool. And Steppenwolf, it was like that, but if the armor was like creepy crawlies instead, because it just constantly was like shifting little tiny bits at a time, and it just always made you uneasy. And so I agree. I think the armor was fantastic.
And it had some practical uses. If you guys remember when the Amazon shot him, he was had all the arrows, and then the armor cut it up. I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Brian. It looks way better than the Steppenwolf we got in the actual cut, which looked almost too human. I was like, why didn't you just get an actor to do that? So I agree. Real fast before you go on, the part about Cyborg's dad, that was huge. Because when he was, again, we're doing full spoilers now, when he was in the chamber and used a heat ray on the cube or whatever, I was like, that's not going to hurt it. Like, what are you doing? Right. And Cyborg's like, no, he did this so we could actually find it. I was like, that's smart. So,
Yep. I will say that scene right there, right after they bring back Superman, and of course all of the people are now just jumping on that one spot and they lose the cube and all that. Why is Cyborg not able to tell his suit not to fire on someone? It's like, oh, the machine inside me detects a threat and it's going to fire and there's nothing I can do about it. That felt like a silly plot device to me. I know we're still in positives, but that I was like, how come you can't tell your gun not to fire?
Maybe. I kind of felt that he was still trying to learn how to control the technology.
Yeah, he's been locked in his apartment.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, maybe to be fair, that's probably my biggest gripe of the entire thing, which shows how much I enjoyed the movie.
That's your only gripe, then that's a good sign.
I guess it was from the mother box, maybe. It was like, I don't know.
It could be. The suit could be like, no, this kid's an idiot, and I'm not going to listen to him telling me not to shoot this big scary thing that's trying to kill me.
Real fast, to Brian's point, though, since it was part of the mother box, again, we know that the mother box doesn't like Kryptonians, which is how the movie started. The Kryptonians dead, so now they're all coming to life, which again wasn't quite as emphasized in the actual cut. I'm just going to compare it back and forth the whole podcast here. So that's actually an interesting point, Brian. Maybe the mother box saw of it, detected the Kryptonian, and was like, oh, this is a threat. So
okay, fair enough. You guys have changed my mind. Movie's perfect.
Snyder, you're welcome.
I
expect a check in the mail.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Hannah, what about you? What'd you like about it?
I think so far, definitely character development was a big thing for me, but not just in general. I think the focus and development on the correct characters. Because when you think of DC and Justice League, especially up to that point, it's been the Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman show. And I think they taking the time to develop Flash, especially for those who hadn't seen the show, taking the time to develop Cyborg, which ended up having a huge part in the plot, and taking the time to develop even like how they came together was really important. So it didn't feel so forced. That I think is a big win. And obviously you need time to do that. Marvel chose to do that over the course of a few years and a few different movies. I felt like DC, or maybe Snyder felt the need to make this larger cut so that that kind of story could be told, since they were trying to rush through catching up to Marvel a few years ago when they first released the theatrical version. And even though there was the confusion of like, oh yeah, Aquaman hasn't happened yet, or that kind of thing, like trying to remember where in the timeline this was, I thought it was very smart for them to release it now because of everyone streaming right now. Streaming is at an all-time high. And if it's going to be 4 hours, then streaming is an excellent avenue to view it in because people can watch it at their own pace. They're not stuck in a theater. We've watched long movies in theaters before, but 4 hours is a long time. And I think what was really, really smart was the way that they broke it up into chapters.
Right, that's true.
Yeah. It,
like,
we
like I was saying, Lord of the Rings was
good.
Oh, sorry. The Lord of the Rings is really long, and like, wasn't Titanic like 4 hours when it first came out?
It just felt like 4 hours. I'll never let you go, Jack. I think it was long. I don't think it was 4 hours long.
It was like 3 or 4 hours. But like, didn't they like have it? They had like an intermission halfway, so like they could have made the first 2 hours and then had like a 30-minute intermission.
It was 3.5 hours.
And then let people go eat and then come back.
Wow.
I'm sorry, we need to pause this podcast for a second. Titanic was 3.5 hours?
Why?
Yes.
How did we survive that?
that
long? The only
Snyder,
movies
I take
that
everything
deserve
back.
to be that long are like
Because
Ben
James
Hur,
Cameron made it.
right? It's like Ben-Hur, 10 Commandments, and the Lord of the Rings movies. Those are the only movies that deserve 3.5 hour runtimes. Oh my goodness.
But if they wanted to release it when they did, they could have. They could have like had an intermission or something. But
yeah, I mean,
I
if you
do
think
agree
about
that it
people
is
who,
better to be like at home.
Yeah, yeah. But if you think about people who go to plays like in like Broadway, that kind of stuff, those are long. Those are long experiences, but there is an intermission, and people will not complain about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely because of when it actually released in 2017, because Batman vs Superman flopped. I think because of the mentality people had towards DC, that long of a movie would not have worked. But I think if Batman v Superman had done well, and I think if everyone loved everything about the movie and they were hyped for DC, for Justice League, then they could have sold a 3.5 hour movie easily. Because as I said, we see that with Endgame. We see that with Marvel. They earned that from their fans. And therefore it was extremely successful. Justice League, the Snyder Cut is a step in the right direction for DC, 100%.
Right.
Any other positives before I share mine?
That was more lighthearted. I thought it was more lighthearted.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the tone wasn't as dark as like Man of Steel and BDS, but it wasn't like Marvel, like the Justice League or the Avengers.
Mhm.
Like since Josh Whedon, he made it too much lighthearted. Like DC is a little more darker than Marvel, so it is understandable to have that kind of difference. Like,
Mhm.
so I feel like that's
There were the
why
mental breaks.
Mhm.
there was some parts that I disagree with, but I'll put that for my negatives.
All right. Well, most of my positives have already been shared. One that hasn't was just a moment in the movie. So I won't rehash everything we've already talked about. I think we've covered a lot of really great things about the movie. So one moment that I loved that really stuck with me was when Steppenwolf came in and was fighting the Amazon warriors, the Amazonians. And at one point he says something like, "I will bathe in your fear." And Hippolyta is like, "Daughters of Themyscira, show him your fear." And they all shout out, "We have no fear." And they just ready their weapons. And I was just like, yes!
I will bathe in your fear.
Daughters of Themyscira, show him your fear! We have no fear!
It was so,
Hype it up.
it was awesome. And I cry easily. So like, I'm already teared up just thinking about it. It was just a powerful scene and a fantastic moment. And I loved every second of it. Yeah.
Would have been a good theater moment. Just like, whoa!
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was so good. That was so good. A few just quick positives real fast before we move on. To Hannah's point, I do think there was a lot of good team unity, especially in this extended cut that we got. Down to the last battle with Steppenwolf, like almost everyone got in a shot at Steppenwolf. I felt a little bad for the guy at the end. But this one, like even Flash had this whole storyline that we didn't get in the actual cut about him having to actually turn back time to make it happen. So it wasn't just Superman comes in and saves the day. It was, we need Superman, but we also need everyone else on the team. So I thought that was really cool. Real fast, we forgot to say it. We did not get mustache Superman or the weird CGI. So that was already a bonus right there. One of our team members who we were able to see it with said it was interesting to see an artist finally get just full ring, like his creative vision for us to see, hey, Zack Snyder, he's got it, the ability to do anything he wants now, and to see kind of his whole thing. That was an interesting thing. And then last thing real fast, the fans made this happen. I can't think of something in history, and maybe if we put some more thought, where there's been such a fan response to get something done. And when they first talked about the Snyder Cut, I'm gonna be honest, I was like, I don't know if that's out there. And Zack Snyder kept dropping hints. Yeah, I have stuff. You guys didn't see it. And it's interesting, Zack Snyder said he never even saw the actual cut. So so it's cool that the fans made it happen. They raised money to bring awareness to the Snyder Cut. But we know that Zack Snyder also stepped away because he had a family tragedy, unfortunately, with his daughter taking her own life. And from my understanding, some of the funds that were raised to make the Snyder Cut happen actually went to suicide prevention awareness. And I thought that's a cool thing about the story as well.
Mm-hmm.
The power of nerds, man. If we can weaponize it for good, and raising money for causes like that is really important. So definitely awesome. Well, after that, I can't imagine any of us have anything negative to say about the Snyder Cut, but I feel like Derek probably does. So
wow. All right, I'll start. Brian, do you want to start?
Oh, Derek. Brian's gonna start. I was gonna say,
Brian,
Derek
DC fan.
Derek is the Thanos of Shattered Studio. I mean, perfect balance. That's what
I just snapped my fingers in half. Half good, half bad.
Right.
Wow.
All of our reviews, they got to be perfectly balanced. All right, Brian, go ahead.
I don't remember if we were actually starting, but I know John had mentioned the slow-mo. I like the slow-mo, but once you mention it, like it does add an extra 20 minutes. So like
it's a significant amount of time.
Yeah. It could have been a little less, but that saying, I still do like it.
Yeah.
And then there were some weird moments, like when Aquaman goes into the water and like the weird lady start singing and the girl picked up
Oh
her
my
skirt.
God,
Like, what is this?
I forgot about that.
What
That
is
was
this
like really
have to do
early
with
on in the
anything?
movie. Oh
Why
man.
is this there?
Yeah, and they were all just like singing, and there were no English subtitles.
Like,
I was
no
just like,
one knows what they're saying unless
what
you
is
happen to
happening?
speak
It
that
lasted like
language.
3 minutes.
And the lady sniffs his sweater. I mean,
You're
I know
like,
it's Jason Momoa. I get it, girls. I get it. Like,
It was so
seriously.
weird. Yeah. I'm sure there's someone watching right now who is like, that was a beautiful scene.
That was my favorite part.
Right? Like, oh man.
And then I felt like when Wonder Woman did her first opening scene, when she like obliterated the guy, I feel like that was kind of out of her style.
Overkill.
But
Speak on it, John.
yeah, it was
John-
a little out of character for her. But other than that, I think that was my main two that I think of right now. If I think of something else while Derek is saying, I will hop on.
I'm saying speak on it, John, because it's funny you brought that up, Brian. So a few of us at the team were able to see it together, and as soon as she did that, John was like, all those people's eardrums would be blown out. Like it was a little overkill.
Yeah, I was like, that's
Just for a little
everyone's
robber
pouring
guy.
blood out of their ears right now. Yeah.
If she can be fast enough to run across like while kneeling to block all of those
Mhm.
bullets, she can be fast enough to just like get him captured or wrapped up or whatever,
Right.
instead of just having to push him
Right?
away.
She
via a lot of
literally
force.
disintegrated the guy. Like it was so it like blew up half the floor. It was like in Die Hard when John McClane drops the explosive down the elevator shaft. It was like that. I was like, come on. It was excessive. It was a little gratuitous.
It was just reason for Snyder to do something cool.
Well, is it
Yeah.
really the DC universe if we don't have gratuitous building damage?
That's true.
I love how Marvel
It's a theme.
addressed that.
Right.
Like at one point with the
Yeah.
Accords, they were just like, stop creating so much damage.
That's really good. To that point, okay, so that brings me to a negative. I was talking to someone and they actually liked the movie too, but they described some parts of it as self-indulgent. So we saw Snyder, again, full release, do whatever he want. And so from that, we get Wonder Woman blowing off the side of a building. This movie, actually, the Snyder Cut was rated R because of some extra language and stuff. You could easily make this a PG-13 movie. Like some of the language and like animated blood, this could have still been a PG-13 movie. And one day I'm gonna rant on that just because I feel like we need some more superhero movies that are easily accessible for the whole family. And again, different superhero movies can have different genres and that's fine. But I feel like a movie like this could have easily still been PG-13. And the length, we talked a little bit about this. Titanic was still withstanding. I think, and I won't rehash everything we said, but I think to be released in 2017, this movie would be too long for the theaters. So again, we talked about as a team where it'd be good if, again, it was broken in 2 movies, that would have been fine. Or get it down to a little over 3 hours. Again, we have seen Lord of the Rings. We're used to that. I thought that would be a good thing. And you can cut off a few of the slow-mo scenes and a few other things. He could have gotten it there. And I think Snyder actually was working on kind of that length cut. Warner Brothers wanted it down to 2 hours, and that was too little for this movie. So that's also a negative on Warner Brothers. And then again, we'll get to that in a little bit. So yeah, there are a few parts that I felt were a little self-indulgent again. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
That's fair. And the only thing that I would add to the in defense of the slow-mo, because I was the one who came into the movie already planning to mock all of the excessive slow-mo scenes. When the Flash went fast enough to turn back time, when he realized what was happening after tripping and falling and having to start all over, when he goes to take the first step before he's even really started to move, and there's like electricity flying all over his body, that was gorgeous. Like that whole scene of him and like,
Yeah.
if you haven't
I
seen
was
it, you
gonna
need to see it. It's beautiful.
I was gonna say that the slow-mo is really valuable and special for Flash specifically because he is so fast, and usually that creates cool things. I mean, we've seen it in other movies with people with similar powers. there's a lot of other instances. It's almost like they were like, well, obviously we're gonna do slow-mo for Flash, but I mean, we need to share the wealth and let allow slow-mo for the other superheroes too. I think the only scene of slow-mo that wasn't Flash that I really thought was cool was when Wonder Woman entered that bank, when she just like boom, and it was like this pause moment, but that didn't last very long.
Yeah.
And like slow-mo is needed, I think, for Flash-like superheroes, but it was not needed all the other times.
Yep. And you know, honestly, at the end of the day, I think we really have, I mean, someone in the comments can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have the Matrix really to thank for that style of slow-mo in movies, because bullet time started with Neo dodging bullet fire from Agent Smith. And that, I mean, that's why it's called bullet time. Obviously they didn't invent slow-mo for the Matrix movies, but its gratuitous use in action scenes, I think, really started there. And so, yeah, so sometimes there's just a lot of it in a movie, for sure. Any other negatives that you guys wanted to share?
I think for someone who isn't as knowledgeable about DC lore like myself, I'm more into other types of other IPs.
Yeah.
There was great character development, yes, that was really helpful for me, but I think there could have been a few like not throwaway, but just like one line or two, like a scene or two that could help set up some of the bad guys, because I only know a handful of villains when it comes to DC, and I had no idea who Darkseid was. I had no idea who Steppenwolf was, and I actually thought at first that there were several confusing moments where I was like, okay, wait, is Steppenwolf Darkseid? Oh wait, no, that's Steppenwolf.
And then the guy that Steppenwolf was reporting to, is that Darkseid?
Yes.
Nope, it's not.
And so I think that could have very easily been set up, and the whole like anti-life equation. I was like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about. And so
it's literally just a really complex math equation.
So I was able to still enjoy the movie. I was able to figure it out, but it took me a long time as far as like movie time. It took me too far into the movie for me to understand who these people are.
Well, and I think what you bring up there is actually something we see in a lot of superhero movies, and Marvel is guilty of this as well, where the big bad evil threat is introduced and taken care of in a single movie. And so, you know, the only, I would say an example of the opposite would be everything with Thanos. I mean, we had a buildup of Thanos for years across several movies. The stones were introduced slowly over time. There was a buildup to this idea. But like I said, even Marvel's not free of this. Iron Man 3, Iron Man 2, Age of Ultron, all of these had the villain completely introduced and taken care of in one movie. And so it was like a one and done kind of thing. And it's harder, and I think it's a harder sell when you do that in one of these big co-op movies like an Avengers movie or a Justice League movie, where you've got this massive villain that's threatening to destroy thousands of worlds, including Earth. And why haven't we heard anything about this guy until right now, when he's immediately a problem? And then we took care of him immediately. The only hope that I have is because they didn't actually take out Darkseid, that we're going to get more Darkseid in another Justice League movie. And that this, you know, we took out Steppenwolf, but we've still got everything else to deal with. So we'll see.
Can I jump in on that point for both of you guys? With Darkseid, so Darkseid is the Thanos of the DC universe, pretty much. And I was actually surprised with the opening scene. First off, it was cool to see Darkseid. I thought he looked cool. He got kind of owned and pretty much one of two fight scenes that we saw him. We only saw him very briefly in a future Flash scene, and there it was cool. He uses Omni beams, which is a big thing for Darkseid. They can go anywhere, and we saw him take down Aquaman and stuff like that. But in the main scene with him attacking Earth, he gets pretty owned, and he's supposed to be the big bad. So it would have been nice if he had a little bit more of more of a threat there. And then they just forget the location of Earth, and that's where the anti-life equation is.
Yeah.
Like I was like, if we're gonna talk about plot holes, like seriously, you couldn't like
You don't remember
Google
you don't
map,
remember
like,
where you were almost completely beheaded
Yes, exactly. So
and
Well,
lost
yeah,
your
you
most
talk
precious
about-
item.
You talk about him being owned, and I feel like that's again them trying to push the story along really fast. Whereas like when Thanos finally shows up, it was him saying sometimes you got to do a job yourself, because he had sent all these other people to do it for him,
Which is exactly what's happening with Darkseid.
and but when he shows up, he is this like crazy threat that no one can defeat, and they like get a few good shots in, but it is really challenging, and it takes time for them to figure out what his weaknesses are, and then they're able to like outsmart him because of it with a little bit of luck or a whole lot of luck.
And time.
But
time travel.
and time travel.
I mean, for
But he has time
Darkseid's
travel
offense,
too.
for Darkseid's offense, he was going against like all the Amazons, all the people from
Atlanta.
Aquaman, Atlantis,
Yep.
like all the gods and all them. Like it took the entire Earth to try and beat him. So
We had like
I mean, he
Zeus,
still had.
right? Was it like Zeus was there or
It
something?
was
Yeah.
Zeus and Ares. Yeah.
Yeah.
it was
I was
Hercules.
like, this is actually really cool. We need more of like this. Like it was there was that one scene, and I know we gotta start talking about Jesus in any second here. But I just want to say there was that one scene where they straight up ripped off the Avengers like assemble moment from what was it? I think it was Age of Ultron. Yeah, because it was in the field outside of Stryker's compound. Not Stryker. That was the X-Men stuff. The guy who had Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. When they were outside in the woods, and then they had that one panoramic slow-mo movement where they were all like together, like jumping. And Justice League did the exact same scene. And I'm just like, okay, you haven't earned that, sir. But of all the things we've talked about, the reasons that we have enjoyed the Snyder Cut pretty thoroughly, it was a solid movie. And before we end this session, I want you guys to give me a rank out of 10 that you would give this movie. But we'll do that at the end. So be thinking about what out of 10 you'll give this movie. Leaps and bounds, regardless of how we feel about the movie or how we can nitpick certain things. It was leaps and bounds better than the theatrical release in 2017. We all agree. Most people agree on the internet, and that's impressive. That is hard to accomplish, to get a lot of people on the internet to agree. But it begs the question, why then was the theatrical release so bad? And we were talking about it, and I think the general consensus is you had the studio wanting one thing and demanding it. You had Zack Snyder wanting one thing and demanding it. And then we talked about the tragedy in his personal life. And so there's a lot of things that kind of happened all at once that made it difficult for this movie to really come together cohesively. And ultimately it was a bunch of people not willing to come to the table and sit down and listen to each other and compromise. And that is just something that we can encounter in our own life. The moments when we're dealing with something we haven't ever dealt with before, and we try and just do it ourselves. We try to own it ourselves and not seek wisdom from people who have knowledge. People who might know better or can at least speak into our lives is really valuable. And with that, there's a verse I wanted to pull up that we had talked about, and then I want to turn it over to you guys and kind of get your thoughts on this. But it's important to get help from other people. And in the book of Proverbs, chapter 15, verse 22, it says this: without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. And so we need to be humble and approach these situations with an opportunity, or with a mindset that we have an opportunity to listen and to gain wisdom from other people and to grow from their input, instead of coming in with, I know how this needs to be done and I'm not going to compromise. Because we talked about how a 4-hour movie probably wouldn't have worked in 2017, just like the 2-hour movie didn't work. And so they needed to come together, and they didn't, unfortunately. What are your guys' thoughts on this? Feel free to expound as well on this idea of seeking counsel and wisdom.
I think that I've worked on a lot of creative projects before, both in leadership and in support roles. And I think that there definitely needs to be a balance between getting a lot of feedback, a lot of input, a lot of consultation, and also having someone who is the final decision maker. I think that from what it sounds like, the studio and the and Zack Snyder were trying to figure it out initially, but there was too much disagreement and no one to like sort of break the tie or someone to make that final decision. And I think in life, it's important to be in unity and be a have someone who is in a leadership role who can make those final decisions and break those ties, but that leader needs to be humble in how they seek the feedback instead of just simply seeking feedback and then ignoring it, and not bringing in support roles because it looks like they were consulting a bunch of people, or bringing in support roles and then saying, I disagree with you, I'm making this decision anyways. Sometimes
someone
you have
who's actually going to
to
listen to and let it inform their decision.
Exactly. So there needs to be someone who makes those final decisions, which I don't think was established for the original movie. But there needs to be input that is taken seriously.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Brian?
Yeah, Hannah kind of said what I was going to say. I was going to say that like you can't just seek counsel. You have to be willing to actually, listen and take it in and take it to heart. But like, you can't just say, yeah, I'm going to seek counsel, and then just be like, I don't care what they said. I'm just going to not do it. I'm just going to do what I want.
Yep.
It's not just seeking counsel. You have to actually take it to heart. And
that's a good point. And neither side did, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about is both sides stuck to their guns 100%. Neither were willing to compromise. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the studio is the one footing the bill. So the studio is going to win that argument. But whoever had won the argument, they both would have lost. So neither of them were actually right in 2017. If there had been compromise, if we had gotten a 3 to 3.5 hour movie, I'm curious where the DC universe would be now, 4 years later. Instead, in 2025, we'll see, but we could have seen today had they compromised and kind of let the pride and ego go a little bit and both make some concessions. Derek?
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is humility and unity. What the whole movie was about was teamwork over and over and over again. I think it was Batman who was like, we need to be united. We need to come together. We need everyone, including Superman, to take down this threat. And what I feel is when we don't seek wisdom from others, we're kind of saying, hey, I got all this by myself. And there's another great verse, Proverbs 12:15, that says, the way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. So I agree with everything you guys just said. I think, especially when we're making some large decisions, it's important to seek counsel and seek wisdom and actually be willing to let that inform our decisions. I just had an 1.5 hour long conversation with a guy who's a fellow believer, but didn't agree with some things that he was saying. And my main point was, hey, dude, you're doing the stuff, and I understand you think you're hearing from God, but God speaks through the Bible and other people as well. So I think you need to just make sure you're in community when you're making some of these larger decisions. Because again, God might give you confirmation or he might give you correction. It's sort of like being a ship that's already set sail and going, but we need help steering it correctly. And when we say, you know, I'm the captain, I'm going wherever I want, that's often when we end up getting shipwrecked or running into another ship and causing more damage, to extend the metaphor. And so again, I think all this comes down to being humble enough to say, hey, I think I know what I would like to do, but let me just confirm that by talking with some trusted advisors. And so my encouragement just in real life to everyone who's hearing this is to have some trusted advisors, some people who really care about you, and who won't necessarily say what you want them to say. They will say what needs to be said that will look after both you and other people. And ultimately, our biggest advisor is God, God himself. The Bible says in James, if anyone lacks wisdom, ask God. He willingly, he wants to provide that wisdom for us. But we have to be willing to listen and believe that he will answer us. And again, some of the ways that God guides us is through other people. So there are times where we have to make the decision ourselves, and we have to get as much advice as we can and go for it. But make sure you're taking time to get some advice if you can. And then
well, Derek, let me interject here, because I think that's a fantastic point. Say someone's watching right now and they don't have those trusted advisors, those people that they know they can bounce an idea off of, get genuine feedback that is going to be honest, that's going to be biblically sound. How do you vet someone? Like, oh, this is someone that because you shouldn't just share your thoughts with everybody on your friends list and get open feedback, because there's a lot of people out there who are going to give you bad advice. Okay. There's a lot of people whose opinions about certain things I don't really listen to. I don't give as much weight to others because they don't have the experience, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the time poured into something. So how would you recommend, what's something to look for or something to think about or consider when you're looking for people that you can open up to and get that honest feedback from?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to your point as well, don't just post it on social media, ask for questions, try to get a bunch of feedback. I think God places people in our lives that we're not often even aware of, we're not looking at. So I would say, as you're looking to make certain decisions, either in a specific life area or generally, look for someone that seems to have wisdom, who's not erratic, who is making very thoughtful decisions, and seek to build a relationship with them. And I would say start by sharing some small stuff, and as you kind of build that trust, and you're seeing how the feedback works in their own life, then you might be able to trust them with bigger stuff. And then ultimately, again, God is our greatest counselor. So, remember to pray, talk to him, look at the Bible. But to your point, John, I would say, look for those people, authority figures in our life. It might be a relative, it might be a teacher, it might be, some type of religious leader that you see is trying to live life in a way that is positive, and start to interact with them more and more, and tell them just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and then hopefully they can guide you in decisions. And someone who's really trying to advise you won't make the decision for you. Right? Yes. They'll just give you advice about it. And, hey, but here's really what I think you probably should do, but it's ultimately up to you, because at the end of the day, it's up to you and God, unless you're in a work relationship or a parental relationship. But they're trying to help you make decisions. They're not trying to make it for you.
They're developing the tools and the confidence in you to be able to, because a good mentor is not concerned with helping you figure out this one issue. They're concerned with building the character that you need to handle this issue and all of the other ones that come after it, right? It's a long-term thing. And so, like in tutoring, I used to do math tutoring when I was in high school, and people would always be like, just tell me the answer. And I'll be like, nope. And I just ask questions, and they figure it out. And guess what? They feel a lot better about themselves when they come to the answer themselves. They gain confidence, they gain self-esteem, they realize I can do this. It wasn't just given to me. So I think that's a fantastic point as well. Anything else, Brian or Hannah? Any other thoughts that have been left on the editing floor? We want this to be the Snyder Cut of the ShatterCast episode, so don't leave anything out. This will
We
be
gotta
fun.
add another 3.5 hours. Come on, guys.
As John had pointed out, if they would have actually released the Snyder Cut when it was supposed to be, we would have probably already had at least one other Justice League by now, maybe both of them, because the epilogue of the Snyder Cut was actually what would have eventually been the next Justice League one. Superman and action when Darkseid had got control of Superman by killing Lois Lane, which is why Lois Lane is the key. That was that whole thing kind of somewhat wrapping up, but yeah.
I think the
We'll have to see.
epilogue was unnecessary.
It could have been
I feel like that was just
end
Zack
credits.
Snyder putting all of his cards out on the table. Like,
It really was. It was the whole like last 10 minutes of the film were just setting up a whole bunch of movie ideas for sure. 100%.
especially Martian Manhunter. We need more Martian Manhunter.
I was excited when I saw Martian Manhunter. I won't lie. I was like,
Yeah, true.
as soon as I saw him, I was like, that's got to be the Martian Manhunter. And then he said it, and I was like, oh, they just said it. Okay, well, that's easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And real fast to bring everything, since we're geeking out, even with the release of the Snyder Cut, I think Snyder was still bumping heads with the Warner Brothers who own DC a little bit, because he wanted to put Green Lantern in that final scene, but they didn't want him to do that, so he went with Martian Manhunter. And so again,
Ryan
it's
Reynolds
like,
is busy with Deadpool anyway.
There was a lantern in the beginning fights.
Sure.
There
It
was.
wasn't
mentioned them.
that one, but it was a lantern.
Yep.
And when Steppenwolf came to his
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. Yep.
mediator,
Yeah, his commander.
between guy.
the shot,
he-
the Sean, or whatever.
Yeah, he was like, there are no Kryptonians,
Kryptonians,
there are
yeah.
no lanterns.
Yeah.
So
It'll be easy.
No protectors here. No lanterns. No Kryptonian. It will fall in his name.
Oh, Steppenwolf, you poor fool. So before we close out, what would you guys give this movie out of 10?
So whenever I scale something out of 10, I like to think of it as if it's like a grade on a paper. Like, okay, that's a 70% or whatever. We've compared it a lot to Marvel, but in comparison to the theatrical version that came out a few years ago, I would say that the theatrical version 6.5, so 65%. And then D. And then the new one, the Snyder Cut, brings it up to an 8, so an 80% of D.
Fair enough. What about you, Brian?
Might be a little biased, but I was thinking at least like a 9.5. But
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Big numbers on Brian. All right. What about you, Derek? What would you give this movie? 9?
Ryan, our resident
What do you
DC
got?
fan, has announced. I was closer to Hannah, actually. I was thinking about that. The actual cut, I would probably give that a 6.5. This cut, I would give it 8.5, maybe an 8.75. Yeah.
Okay. All right. You guys are really getting specific on your numbers. I just came into this thinking like 9 out of 10. Yeah. So I think a 9 out of 10, 90%. I think it's an A. Not even just comparing it to the theatrical cut, but just comparing it to the rest of the DC movie universe that we have right now. I really liked Aquaman, mainly because Aquaman felt the least DC of any DC movie we've had recently. And so,
can we just be honest? Aquaman is just Jason Momoa.
It is, and that's okay.
Well, at the same time,
it worked.
at the same time, Wonder Woman is just Gal Gadot. if
Okay,
we're being honest.
that's a fair point. I keep forgetting that movie exists, and it's a phenomenal movie. The
And
first
I even like Shazam. I
forgot that
right,
existed.
Shazam
Yeah,
is. Oh
yeah,
my god.
I think again that's one of my gripes. We're gonna have to do another segment about this. I thought they could have toned down just a few of the scene in the boardroom. Anyways, I'm getting way too in the weeds.
We got Black Adam coming out soon.
Yes.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Anyways,
Okay. All right.
Okay.
If we keep talking, we're just gonna talk for like another 3 hours, and this
Yeah.
really is gonna be a
Oh, this
Snyder
is our
Cut.
Snyder cut.
And
This is
So.
our Snyder Cut.
it's exciting though, because for the first time in a few years, I'm really looking forward to the next little bit of content we're going to get from DC. So I hope they keep it up. I hope the studio is paying attention to the fan feedback and the general consensus around the Snyder Cut, and that moving forward, we just get more working together, more unity, more harmony between studios and producers and directors, because studios want to make money, directors want to make something that like is a form of art that they're proud of. And the nice thing is, when the director does that really well, the studio also makes money. And so if they work together, I think we've got hope for the future of the DC universe. So thank you guys for being here on this panel. Derek, Brian, Hannah, all of you guys are fantastic. Thank you for watching this. If you didn't watch it, we probably wouldn't do it. We would just be a bunch of nerds like hanging out on a Saturday afternoon and talking. But we get to record it and share it with the internet because wonderful. Thank you. You're awesome. We love you. More importantly, God loves you. We'll catch you next time. See you later, guys.
Hashtag continue the Snyderverse.
Just
slip it in there.
2 into the Snyderverse. All right, bye. Is Crypt tonight?
Tonight. Oh.
That actually makes more sense.
A note for the editors. When you edit this video, put on the screen Crypt tonight.
And what John just said, put that in the bloopers. All right, we're good. But you have to explain your joke. All right, we're good.
No, my fault that joke was just too many levels above you guys.
that was a mega level. I'm still here now. Okay.